Good afternoon. Welcome to the W. David Baird Lecture Series. My name is Lee Katz. I serve as the Dean of Seaver College. This series was named after Seaver Dean Emeritus David Baird, who was Dean of Seaver College from 1998 to 2008. He was an extraordinary scholar, teacher, author, mentor, and he founded this series to welcome scholars and teachers, public figures, intellectuals, and authors to campus to interact with students and faculty and staff on important discussions about what's going on in the world today. And I'm delighted that we're able to welcome and proud to welcome one of our own, Arik Housley, today. I want to thank the Pepperdine Libraries, Dean Rusa, and Jeff Bowen for partnering with this event. A little bit about the format today. Arik will speak for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions and answers, often the interesting, probing parts of these talks, these interactions. And then Arik has generously donated books, as you saw when you came in today, and he will graciously agree to sign those for you afterwards. So we are committed to ending this at 12:45 so people can get to class on time. At this point, I'd like to introduce a friend, colleague, professor of religion and sustainability, Dr. Chris Soper, to introduce our speaker. Dr. Chris Duran. I've got a lot of friends named Chris. Where is Chris Soper anyway? Dr. Chris Duran, how about that?
I have so many questions right now for you, Lee. Yeah. All right, thank you for that lovely introduction, Lee. Arik, I'm just going to call you by last name or first name or whatever as we go through this. So how do you introduce someone you've known almost your entire life? Our wives have known each other since they were freshmen in a class together. I've known Arik since I was a sophomore. We've done so much stupid stuff together, it's difficult to remember it all, although Elena seemed to know how to embarrass me in front of others, talking about it at my dinner table. We attended each other's weddings. Amy and I were at Arik and Hannah's wedding. I was the only one comfortably dressed in a Hawaiian shirt, and everyone else was burning up in the Napa heat. Hannah showed up to our wedding. Arik was, of course, quote, working at the store at that time. Our lives have been intertwined for a very long time, but we've lived on separate parts of the state. When their daughter Elena was thinking about coming to Pepperdine, we hosted the family and answered all of her questions, not thinking she was actually going to come here to Malibu, because at that point she wasn't. She was likely going to Gonzaga. But she decided at the last minute to come here to Malibu, and we had her over for dinner for a couple of months, about once a week before that fateful November night. Hannah said some of the only exercise Elena may have done was walking up the hill to our house over and over again. She didn't realize the shuttle went up there. If you didn't know already or haven't read the book, my wife and I found out through a bizarre, perhaps providential series of events on Google Chat that Elena was the only Pepperdine student unaccounted for after the shooting at Borderline. I eventually made the decision to call Arik and Hannah in the middle of the night and let them know everything that I knew, because I didn't want them to hear it from someone else. To be the ones to actually call your friends and deliver that news in the middle of the night is not something I would ever want anyone to go through. We did so much together those first few hours after they flew down to Southern California to meet with police. We were there together for a while in Thousand Oaks when the police brought all the families together to identify their loved ones. They, along with so many of our friends, were at our house for several hours that first night before we moved across the street to one of the Malibu Country Estate properties that Pepperdine owns, and then the Woolsey fire happened. Throughout so much of the aftermath of Elena's murder, including the very night that they stayed with us, Arik and I have talked about our understanding of faith and a purpose. One time he said, "I have to take the idea of God seriously because someone as smart as you does." Within the number of our many breakdowns, my wife apologized to Arik and Hannah for not keeping Elena safe. They both said to us in numerous times, it brought them comfort to know that she ate her last meal with people who truly loved her. Over the last 8 years, the four of us have laughed and cried more than any of us could have ever imagined before that November 7th night. But as through it all, we know that we're thankful for each other. It's been such an honor and a privilege to see Arik go down this new road of this journey, one that seems so simple, but is actually incredibly complex, helping others process their grief. Arik has always been one to help others, particularly those in his local Napa community, but I firmly believe he has chosen to embrace a vocational calling that far too few on this planet desire to actually do, because it is so treacherous and so meaningful, and that is, be vulnerable enough with your own life story so that you can show others that there is indeed light even in the darkest of tragedies. That's what his book's about, and that's what he models so courageously in public ways in numerous communities across the country. Please welcome my friend and my brother, Arik Housley.
Already had me crying a little bit over there, Chris. Thanks for that. Chris Soper. Sorry. Open door. You'll find when I speak a lot of times, especially when you're talking about grief, it's a very heavy topic, yet at the same time, this is something that we're not going to avoid in our lifetime. Every day we are here, we're one day closer to our last day. So I try to use my story to help people understand where we are and how that helps us moving forward in our day-to-day. So as you know, on November 7th, 2018, I got a phone call on November 8th at 12:36 in the morning, the next morning, where Chris and Amy called and said, "Arik, it's Chris and Amy. There's been a shooting at Borderline. Elena was there. We knew she was at their house that night for convocation, like the dinner where the students would go. And they said there's still a lot of news. The shooter's still supposedly in the building. There's still people alive in there. They're trying to figure out details. We'll let you know anything we know, but we're praying and we hope everything's okay." So as the night went, every second that ticked by, we immediately turned on the news. And I called my brother. So my brother, Adam, was also a Pepperdine graduate. He was working for Fox News at the time as a national correspondent. And so he was living in Santa Monica, jumped in his car, and drove up to Thousand Oaks. So we kept getting kind of updates of what was happening. And one of the first people that I spoke to was Connie, who was such a blessing to us to handle it the way she did, and just be communicative and kind in what was the darkest moments for us. I called, I think, public safety, if I remember correctly. They put me in touch with Connie, and then we were just trying to feed each other updates as things happened. In the next half an hour or so, my wife, Hannah, looks at me and just says, "Can we just turn the TV off?" And I think from the moment we got the phone call, we knew what was real. I mean, at that point, the shooting had happened at 11:22. We were called at 12:36, so an hour and 14 minutes later. We're now 20, 30 minutes later from that. So the only thing that went through my head at first was, we're on speed dial, right? Everybody's got favorites on their iPhone, or if you have an Android, sorry. But you have a way of having those that it really shows you who you have. So do you remember most of these people's phone numbers when you don't have to call it all the time? So I'm hoping and praying that that's the case. I started texting her, and when I had heard that he was still alive in the building, possibly, I stopped because I thought I'd hate for her to be hiding right now, and then he hears her phone beep, and he goes over and takes another life. So at that point, Hannah says, "Let's turn off the phone or turn off the TV." We called our best friends, Dave and Lori, who came over, and they were with us for that time. The chaplain, a couple of friends in the police force who comes in later in the story, I called him and I said, "I don't know what to do right now." Like, do we go down? Hannah wants to go down to Southern California. I don't know. Do we sit and wait? Like, nobody can prepare for this type of news to come through. So we jump in the car, or we call the chaplain, Chaplain Lee, who became a dear friend. And he said, Arik, it was now probably 2 a.m. And he says, if she's alive, do you want to be there to give her a hug or just hold her? And if she's what we believe is the inevitable, now at this point, you need to go. And so we booked a flight, and we went to leave the next morning. So at about 6 o'clock, we wake up, 5:45, we wake up Alex, our son. He was 14 at the time. A little bit, this was probably a year before. It's okay. I'm very angry with you right now. Sorry, Vest. Okay, so Alex was about probably 12 in these pictures. So we wake up Alex 5:45-ish, and obviously tears in our eyes. We said, Alex, we got to go. We need to go to Southern California. There's been an accident. And he says, is Lena okay? And of course, my response is, we don't think so. So we get in the car. We go to Sacramento Airport. We fly down, and when we land at Burbank, they ask for everybody on the plane to stay seated while we were escorted off the plane. So we get off the plane, and at the gate, right when I walked through, is the chief of police for Burbank Airport. And he, gives us his condolences, and, I'm so sorry you're coming down. And we're ushered outside where my brother's parked, and shouldn't have been driving us, but he was there to take us to Thousand Oaks. Yesterday, just to give you an idea, was one of the first times I'd come through Burbank again, and I walked through yesterday, and I got pretty emotional just walking through the door, just kind of that little reminder of that moment when I was coming down. Now we find ourselves in our new reality. We come down to Pepperdine. We come to Thousand Oaks, where we were ushered into a room. At that point, we get seated immediately because everybody else had already been informed of the other victims' families. And so I'm thinking, why are we going in front of all these people? Like, I'm thinking, I don't need to go in. Everybody's here for a reason. And they said, no, you guys are next. So we went out. They put us in a room, and we wait seemed like forever, because one or two people weren't supposed to be there. When you're informed publicly of these types of moments, there's kind of a process that they do for the informational process to really let you know after some sort of event like this. So everybody ends up in the room. I don't remember a thing that was said other than Elena was one of the victims that they've confirmed. And at the same time, we were introduced to our victims advocate, Andrea, who said, I know you're probably not even going to know what's going on right now. We've already spoken to Adam. Sign this paper, and we'll be your advocate to handle everything for you. We'll let you know of notices. We'll take care of any kind of financial issues. We'll deal with everything. Of course, we just sign it. We don't even know what's going on. And then the chaplain across the table looks over at me, and he says, if I can give you any advice, I would say to you right now, if you're tired, sleep. If you need to go for a walk, go for a walk. If you want to talk, cry, whatever you need to do, do that. He said, don't worry about tomorrow, next week. Don't even worry about tonight's dinner. Like, just live in the moment, because you're going to just have to get through this and feel this grief all the way through. And that was probably some of the best advice, especially in that moment, that I had gotten. So if any of you, and everybody in the room has probably been through grief, some people much more than others, and you find yourself going like, okay, I can take this. So, and how do I get through it? And what should I do right now? So in those moments, it's really kind of allowing yourself to feel it, because there's no getting past it. If you suppress those feelings, they will come up 5 years later, 10 years later. So it's really important to understand that. So we basically heard this message, and Hannah looks at me and she goes, I want to go to Pepperdine. I want to go to the chapel. So we come out, we go to the chapel. I think we were immediately met by Hung and Crean, which, if anybody that you want to have positive in your life, that was the last person you want there, is Hung Lee. So by the laughter, you guys all know Hung. Captain Positive, and Captain Pepperdine, always in blue and orange too, by the way. But so we see Hung and Crean, we see Dr. Ghost, we started seeing Dr. Sexton, and all these people that we were very close to, and had these comforting moments Some of my fraternity brothers joined as well fairly quickly. One of them, David Roach, walked Alex, said, I'm going to take him away. I'm going to get him to go out for a walk. And I take him down. He takes him down to Alumni Park just to get him away from all of the emotion. And he said, I had an amazing conversation with Alex, just kind of seeing where he's at. So seeing a 14-year-old at that time go through what he did was pretty amazing in that sense. I'll spare you all the crazy other details that go with it, but so Pepperdine was unbelievably gracious. We had food up at the compad, was what I called it, back when we were still in a hut, but it's whoever did it did a nice job up there. We ended up there, met up with some of the Sigma Chi's, some other friends from alums that came up to have something to eat, and then one from Connie's team, and I don't remember her name. She was super nice. I don't know why I always think it was Nancy, but I think that's wrong. She says, what do you want for me to put? We're going to put you guys up in the chancellor's home. What do you want? And I'm looking at her like, I have no idea. Bananas and water? Am I here a week or am I here an hour? Like, I don't know. So my suggestion to you, and I talk about it more a lot, is you know, you don't even need to ask. Just say, you know what? I'm going to get some food. We're going to put it in there. And if they don't want it, don't worry about it. Give it to somebody else. Throw it away. You know, if somebody goes through that, give them something, because you just don't know in those moments. But they know that you care when you just say, I've done this for you. So we end up at the chancellor's home, and it wasn't much later that we found ourselves that night. We went to bed. It was still the 70-mile-an-hour winds. And then Elena's godfather, Jake, had woke me up, and he goes, Arik, we got to go. And I said, well, what's going on? He says, there's a fire coming. We have to evacuate. And I'm thinking to myself, God, what is going on right now? Like, are you serious? Is somebody playing a joke on me? Or, you know? And so we evacuate down to Malibu, down to Santa Monica, and went to the beloved Coffee Bean with the purple straw that was Elena and Hannah's favorite. And then at that point, we're like, well, now what? So another friend, Tracy, also Pepperdine, she got us some hotel rooms by LAX, and we spent the rest of the day kind of in this fog. That night, I walked into the hotel room, and my son closes his laptop, and I said, Alex, what are you doing? And he goes, I just wrote my speech for Lena's funeral. And I thought to myself, I don't even know how I'm standing here right now. How is a 14-year-old telling me he's already got his speech written for his sister's funeral? And so, you know, with tears in my eyes, I was like, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, if he can do this, I can do this, and we can do this together. And so that's been kind of our journey the whole time. So that was, you know, that's a lot of our new reality and where we were. A lot of times I talk to people about this is you know, you never move on from the loss of your loved ones. We'll never move on from even loss of relationships, of jobs. We move forward. Like, this is a part of our story. So I look at it now after meeting a friend who lost his daughter to brain cancer at the age of 3, and I'm like, man, I was so blessed. I had 18 years. We got to travel. We got to do so many things that we wanted to do, and we were so fortunate that people look at me and go, how could you say that, knowing how Elena died? Well, it's not about how she died, it's how we lived. And so it was kind of the idea of saying, like, look, we're going to take this with us, we're going to carry this with us for the rest of our life. And that's a very hard thing for people to kind of understand, but it really is understanding that it is part of our story. We've all made mistakes in our work and everything else. Rather than make excuses, you take it, you learn from it, and you move forward with it. You carry this with you for the rest of your life. A lot of people have asked me, I mean, I've had some things, and we'll probably talk about it in a minute, is things that people said, but I tell people, whatever you do, do not go down the dark road of why. And I say that because my father said to me, why did you let her go out that night? I would have never let her go out. And I was like, don't ever say that to me again. She didn't do anything wrong. She was going out to have fun. She was a Pepperdine student going to Borderline, which those of us that have been around Pepperdine for a few years, we went to Borderline even though it was in the other location, right? And so we've all been there. It was college line dancing night. She'd just had dinner with Chris and Amy and all of that team. She had done all these things. We encouraged her to go out. And it was one of those moments that I said, we can't look back and try to say, why did we not call? Why did we not do this? Why did we do something different? She was going to go to Pepperdine, and I did a survey on SurveyMonkey that had a whole bunch of stupid questions. It was like, would you rather be in the snow or in the beach? Like, I knew what her answer would be. I could look back at that now and say, well, I encouraged her to go. This is my fault. That's not real. She was where she was supposed to be. And Hannah's always said, when Amy embraced her, and I didn't know that when I first wrote the first draft of the book, and Hannah still hasn't read it to this day because she lived it. So a lot of people go, and I go, this isn't a fictional book. She lived this thing firsthand. And because it's very difficult. And I call it a God moment. When she did sit down in Tahoe, she was like, I can't read this at home. We go to Tahoe. She has the first 150 pages printed. She goes out in the backyard. She sits down. She's like, okay, I'm gonna read it. She gets about 10 pages in, and the wind picks up and just blows all of them. And we're like, I think we're good. So it was an opportunity for us to really understand it. So really, at that point, we started to look at these things, and you really can't go down those paths because that doesn't change the outcome. So for example, the victim's advocate, Andrea, when all the police reports would come out, she would call us before or email us or text us and say, hey, the police report's coming out, this is coming out, that's coming out. For us, we as the family, we were the only family that chose not to know the details. And specifically, when the police report came out with all the details of who was where, the shooting, the videos, everything, we just said, thank you, we're not interested. So when I would wake up with nightmares, and I would wake up with nightmares for a long time, all of those pictures in my head were not real. So I was fortunate enough not to be there for it. So some people have gone through severe tragedy and they've witnessed it, and those things they have to live with. I was lucky enough not to have that. So I've chosen not to go there. So we choose this path to just not go down that road because there's no why that's going to change it, or change the outcome in that way. I'm a big Brené Brown fan. Vulnerability is courage. So this is how I've ended up in this pathway. I just met Kim tonight that I hadn't seen since Elena's new student opportunity that was in Northern California. And the first time I spoke was about 3 days after. We returned home on that Saturday after. And on Sunday, I was at an event for a March Against Gun Violence where they were recognizing Elena. So I stood up there and I spoke, and I've got this Pepperdine beanie on with a big snowball thing on the top that Elena had won at that event, and she wanted to get it for me to keep my bald head warm. And it was a question about Songfest, but because Hannah and I had both been in it, she knew the answer. She was the only one that did. And so I wore that day, and it just reminded me of that when we met. It was a fun little moment. I try to tell people all the time, there's really no rating system for this grief thing. So you lose your child, your grandchild, your brother, your mom, whoever. Like, this is still grief, so we don't really have to rate it. We're all still going through our journey, and some of this is very hard for people. They've gone through things. Their story is different. Even for my son, Alex, and then Hannah and I went through multiple deaths that were very close to me, that close to my age, and by the time I was 18, probably 6 people in my life. But Hannah was 43 when Elena's murder happened, and it had been a great grandparent, and that was it. And Alex was 14, and I don't know that there was anybody in his life that he had really. So even us together, our journey was different. But we looked inward in that way. One of the other things that I talk about a lot is it's okay to not be okay. So it's okay to ask for support. It's okay to ask for time. It's okay to ask for anything you're needing in that way. And it's hard because a lot of people don't want to. I give the example, the best advice my brother gave me was on the Saturday night after the shooting. We were here, we were trying to figure out about going back. We were supposed to fly back on Southwest when it was still all the cattle call, like everybody on. And a friend messaged and he said, hey, and he was one of the friends that sent a message that said, what was she doing so far from campus at a bar? But I knew he was a good friend and he meant well. But he said, we'd like to send our private jet down to bring you guys home. And I said, no, absolutely not. That's expensive. And Adam said, oh, the answer is yes. He knows what it costs and they want to do this. And so Bob knows Adam well enough. That was good advice from Adam. Pretty good for him to be. But so I look over at my son, and Alex is like, his eyes lit up. And I was like, okay, if the offer's still on the table, we'll do it. So we got to fly home on some private 8-passenger jet or whatever, which was pretty awesome, especially compared to Southwest. So it was one of those opportunities to do that. So But what we learned in that moment was not only is it's okay to be okay, but it's also people are offering because they want to offer. So let them offer, even if you don't want it. If they bring you food and you're gluten-free, go, oh, thank you, and put it off to the side and be done. And if you take them food and you realize they were gluten-free after, say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to let you know I was thinking about you. It's that, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. So I refer to this as my beach ball. So when I talk about Elena's death, I say, like, look, I have this that I'm going to carry it for the rest of my life. So if you take your feelings piece and go, okay, I'm going to suppress this. I don't have time for this right now, and I shove it underwater. If you remember being a kid and trying to put the ball under the water and sit on top of it or something, I mean, it's a lot more strength and balance and energy to do that. So for me, I've always looked at it, this is my beach ball, so I got to just tuck it under my arm and carry this for the rest of my life. It will never be something I get rid of. And nor will I want to. I would love if I didn't have to carry it, but that's not a choice. So I use that as my analogy, as my metaphor of understanding grief, that if you want to, and you've met somebody in your life, example, a good friend, her kids had gone through school with Hannah. My wife was a teacher at the high school. Both of them were her students. The oldest had a baby that passed at 4 months old. Immediately from birth, they were on life support and just things like that. So baby passes, we go over to the house, and Grandma, who I grew up with, she's in the kitchen just working away, and that's how she always was anyway. But I walked in there at one point, and I said, Nikki, I said, it's okay for you to take the time for yourself too, because she was so busy I need to be here for everybody right now, that it's like, this is also your grandchild that you've lost, and you need to be able to have that time, and I'll cook for you right now if you want me to cook. And so I think she appreciated being recognized in that way, but it's something that we really have to understand how that works. I talk to people a lot about how you can feel joy and sorrow at the same time. It hurts every day knowing about the loss of Elena. And the fact that I don't get to see her walk the aisle. I didn't get to see her graduate from Pepperdine. Didn't get to see her do the things that she should have been able to do. At the same time, I also feel so appreciative. And so some people, and when they're, especially in the first part of the grief journey, it's hard for them to laugh. So if you notice, I try to add humor into this story because it's okay to laugh. We're so fortunate with the time that we have. Our time here is very finite. And so we really have to take that and enjoy it as much as possible. So I find myself consoling others more than they console us. A lot of times people are so amazed by what's happened, they don't even know. I still see people now 7 years later that come up to me and say, I never got to see you or say anything. And it's them kind of, they're wanting to feel consolation, and that's totally fine. My suggestion is anything that comes out of someone's mouth, and I'm convinced 100% of the time that they want to say the right thing. So even when they say, what was she doing so far from campus? I know how you feel. My dog died. Stuff, it's crazy. But if you've gone through it, you've gone through it. But I think the thing is just know that their heart is in the right place. They're trying to say the right thing. They want to have that opportunity to say something to make them feel better as well. My suggestion is just less is more sometimes. So I use this analogy in what to say. So, and this is perfect at Pepperdine. Strong Christian woman loses her daughter, let's say, okay? And you walk up to her and say, she's with God now. Now, some people would be like, thank you, I appreciate that. She was faithful, she was a strong Christian. But then you could also look at that and go, she might be angry with God right now, which a lot of people go through that part in their journey where they are angry, like, I've been a faithful servant. There's no reason why this should have happened. Why her and not him, or, something along those lines. What we have to understand is that's their journey, and they have to go through that in their own time. So while you might have thought that was the right thing to say, and most of the time what we say is what we think we would want to hear, which would make sense, right? But I usually tell people less is more, and maybe say something simplified like, I have no idea what you're feeling right now. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you and your family, right? And so when some people get very angry when they say, I know how you feel, because I don't know how Alex was feeling, right? We were living it together, and I don't know how he was feeling. So that's a typical, I know how you feel to try to relate, but typically I tell people, you don't know how they feel. So just say, hey, I'm just thinking about you and your family right now. I mean, we had points where people literally would walk up to us, make eye contact, drop their head and turn and walk away because they didn't know what to say. They were so, but then others would just turn and make eye contact and put their hand over their heart. And I'm like, thank you. Like, that's it. My pet peeve was when people would say there are no words, because then I'm thinking, well, then don't say anything. But I have a lot of friends who they appreciate that. They're like, oh, there's no words. Okay, so even if you find yourself in the moment and you say, I'm so sorry, I know how you feel, and it slips out or anything, just say, I apologize. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you and your family. I was thinking about you and your daughter. And that's it, right? A couple of friends, one of them was on my podcast. So Elena's memorial was held about a week later in November. 9 months later, their daughter was killed in an accident. A stack of catering chairs just fell over at a lunch place. They were setting up a 70th birthday for grandma, fell over and crushed a little 6-year-old girl. And so they were with us, and 9 months later, we're back with them. And it's just a matter of understanding that as we go through all these moments, as we're there for each other, we don't know how they're going to handle this, and understanding that we're each going through these moments in our own way. So it's understanding of how to look at them and just say, how can I be here for you right now? So after Addie's passing, I immediately texted the sister-in-law and said, Hannah and I are not expecting you to want us to come over, but we're happy to come if we would be of support. And they said, oh, we'd love to have you here. So fortunately we went and we spent that time with them, and we were very close with them, and we were before. But I think it's a matter of being available and understanding that stuff. In the end, Chris was kind of mentioning it, how we've had some great conversations about faith. My faith journey has been a very difficult one in my life. My parents grew up in very Christian households, but had very big falling outs with their families, and so we were not raised Christian. But I was going to church with my grandmother, with different people at times. Came to Pepperdine University. I married a good Catholic Filipino girl. And so I was really surrounded by people of faith. Dr. Caldwell was a big inspiration for me. Chris has been a friend for a long time. So when I see people that I know and respect, because when I was young, I used to think, well, is this just weakness? Like, why do people need this in their life? And then I started meeting intelligent people that were also faithful. And I started thinking, okay, maybe, because I didn't get to learn that until I got to Pepperdine. And so I think ultimately, in my experience, what I learned post Elena's death was, before I used to think everything was tangible. So unless God gave me a sign, which a lot of people have heard that kind of stuff, I don't know. I can't touch, feel, taste, or smell. And after Elena's murder, I realized, well, what if everything that we don't see is not necessarily not here? So, and I know that sounds super unusual to say it in that way, but knowing that it's because we can't touch it or taste it or feel it, how does it mean it doesn't exist? And there's faith, right? Faith is not just faith in religion. While they're the same and very, together, they're also very separate as well, because you have faith in relationships, you have faith in things that happen in your life. But faith as a journey has been one for me that it's been amazing to see how that's happened. And I can see a lot of people in their grief journey, they're actually very angry with God. They're very angry in this process because they don't feel that this was deserved. And I think at the same time, I look at it and go, well, who's the one that's judging that, right? So it's just understanding that if we keep hope and we keep finding hope and try to find our way through things, we go from there. So there's been a lot of things that have happened. This was up in Tahoe, and I don't know if you can see it well, but the picture, I know the green orbs pop up every once in a while on people's phones, but that one, if you actually zoom in, it looks like Christ on the cross. And we've had plenty of things that have happened. So it's just, these are the things that are just, eye-opening to us in that way. So in the end, it comes down to hope, faith, love, resilience. These are the things that we try to move forward with, because this is our everyday, and we can choose to take this as a part of our story and own it and hurt with it, but also feel that joy at the same time. So at this time, I wanted to open it up for some questions and see if anybody had any questions or comments or? Yes.
Hi. Thank you. I wanted to explore a little bit about when you were going through this and subsequent to that, have you ever gotten to a point, I mean, this wouldn't be right away, but gotten to a point where you feel like the comfort from God or the love of God? And, you know, we talk about the Holy Ghost, we talk about the Godhead, and I know each religion has its own take on that. But have you ever had moments where you felt, whether you were alone or with people, where you felt that love of Christ or that comfort to help you through it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we didn't go through something, a lot of people know what PTSD is, right? We went through something called post-traumatic growth. So we were pretty much immediately with acceptance, which is the final stage of grief. And we were at acceptance in sorrow. So we were sad, but we knew the inevitable was the case. Much of that, we believe, was because God just wrapped his arms around us in that moment. And it's funny all the time now. I remember seeing that poem when we were kids on the wall, everybody's home, footprints in the sand, right? And that was us and how we felt. Like Pepperdine community, the Thousand Oaks community back home in Napa, our family, our friends, everybody just immediately embraced us. We were also very open to it. So I think a lot of people in that journey, they're closing off, right? They're isolating themselves. They're kind of putting this shell around themselves. And that protective nature, which is very normal, also pushes people away. And it was the humanity and it was the love that we were so embraced with, which we believe was God's love, that really got us through to where we are today. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your generosity in doing this again. I wonder if you could speak about the process of writing the book, what that was like, and then if you want to give a shout out to your editor too, that would be
Yeah. Yeah, so the stories in the book, Hannah had looked at me and said quite a few times, she's like, you're consoling so many people that have lost a child that maybe you should consider writing a book because I can see you coming home just emotionally drained. So December of 2022, it was a rainy day like this, and Hannah looks over at me and she goes, do you want to go to a women in fiction author's book reading with me? And my response was, are you asking me to go with you, or are you asking me to please join you? Because if I get a choice here, my choice is no. But I love you, and I will go with you. So she's like, I'm asking you to join me. So I said, okay. So we went. I met two women that were there. I gave them both my card. I didn't tell them why. I just said, I've been thinking about doing a book. I tried to write it a couple times. It's not working, but I'd love to pick your brain. They looked me up on Google. It wasn't hard to find the story. I was then introduced to Scarlett Lewis. So if you guys saw the Super Bowl where it said "Choose Love" in the end zone, Scarlett Lewis lost her son Jesse in the Sandy Hook shooting. We've become very good friends. Her whole premise is on choosing love. There are 4 pillars of choosing love. And she said to me on my podcast, Adam Lanza was abused, neglected, and fell through the cracks for 20 years and chose to buy guns and go kill 20 school children and six teachers. We failed him. And I'm thinking, from a parent to say that's forgiveness, right? That's true forgiveness. And really, forgiveness is not for them, it's for us. Like, for me to forgive the shooter was me setting myself free. So I say that because all of a sudden I end up on this journey to write the book, and I get introduced to Holly, my co-writer, and I looked at her, I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I keep trying, I get 6 pages in, and I'm like, this is stupid, and I throw it away. And she says, she goes, stop trying to tell the story. She says, tell me 30 small stories. She goes, Arik, your brain goes everywhere. So you're a storyteller. Tell me 30 stories, whatever, and then we'll decide what makes the book. And so the book ended up being in 2 halves. Sorry, this thing's beeping at me because I forgot the timer was on. It's in 2 halves. The first half is the unthinkable, which was about getting the phone call, all of the things that happened after, and then the signs and such. And then the second half is called The Thinkable, which is more about the post-traumatic growth, the new relationships and such. So a lot of people ask me frequently if it was cathartic to write the book. To me, it was less cathartic. It's very fulfilling to help people in this. So it's less of healing for me versus doing this for people and helping them through their journey and telling our story and being vulnerable, as mentioned earlier, because it helps people that some people are very stuck in their grief journey. So. Oh, and Holly was awesome. So she, Skywriter Books, she ended up helping me through it. And it was funny because I wrote all the stories and then she helped make it all flow through, like finishing up one chapter and then into the next. And we have a funny little story on the editing process was somehow in the editing, and so Ashley Moreeder, one of the Pepperdine grads that was Elena's sweetmate, helped edit the book. Somehow in the editing process, one of the friends, Bob Anderson, who's my speaking kind of coach, mentor, it came up that somehow an editing thing happened and said when Bob passed away. And so a friend who was reading it was like, oh my gosh, did Bob pass away? And so the first round of the books came out and we had to immediately have it fixed and edited. So there was about 50 books that came out. So I sent him, and he was one of the readers of it too. So he didn't catch it. So I sent him a copy. And so now when I speak to him, he's like, I want you to refer to me as Jesus because I've been resurrected. So it was a really fun process, and yeah, Holly was awesome. She was really great to kind of guide me through that. Yeah. So.
In the book, you talk some about the process that you and Hannah kind of went through as Alex was getting older and deciding on moving to college. I wonder if you'd mind talking and sharing a little bit about how that has been for you, just helping Alex launch in the aftermath of Elena's murder.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's been so strong in the process, and I love at the end of the book, we did FAQs, and so he actually answered those, but he told me, you're not allowed to read them until they publish the book. So I didn't know those answers until after, which was pretty awesome. I mean, he's been crazy resilient. Like, I mean, the epitome of it. He went to college in England, so he chose, Hung kept saying, you got to come to Pepperdine. He's like, you don't have a soccer team. I'm not going. So Alex, and I was just talking to somebody about this earlier, or to Hung about this earlier today. He just in the last 6 months finally decided he wasn't going to chase the dream to play pro anymore. So he's now in his master's. He's already graduated. So England is 3 years of a university. So for those of you that are on the financial plan with Pepperdine, that saves you 25%. Sorry. I hope they don't get me in trouble for that one. So he finished up 3 years in York, St. John University, where Hogwarts or Diagon Alley was designed after, right? And then he's now doing his master's in sports psychology in Loughborough, and he's playing soccer and doing that there. So watching him grow, a lot of people are asking us, like, how could you let him go so far? And I was like, well, Elena was in the safest city in America. You know, like, really, this could have happened in Napa. My dad even said, he goes, well, if this would happen here. And I said, Dad, if it was at South Napa, it's a 20-minute drive. By the time you find out about it, 30 minutes later, it's done. You're not getting in your car and running down there and saving anybody. And, I mean, in his mind, he would, even with his walker and everything. But really, you know, like, seeing how Alex has done it, I mean, our youth are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for. We just have to love them and help them walk through it. And when they're not okay, we need to stand with them. And when they're okay, we need to let them go a little bit, right? And give them that strength. So seeing him travel around the world, every time he leaves, we laugh because the joke is who's going to get allergies and start crying first. So we're like, oh, it's allergies. Oh yeah. So yeah, no, he's been amazing to see in the process. So thank you, Greg.
So when it comes to anger
Mm-hmm.
and being a patriarch of a family, having to be strong for your family in this process, and then dealing with the anger of what happened to your daughter, how do you get to the point of true forgiveness? Because we can say we forgive when atrocious things happen to us or we're part of it, but then, you know, there's saying it, and then there's really feeling it and that really happening.
Yeah, for sure. So the question is around how, you know, to say forgiveness versus the anger that's really there, and if that's real in the forgiveness process. For me, as I mentioned before, forgiveness was for me, less for him, if that makes sense. How he got himself to where he was. I mean, he was a PTSD veteran. He had, I don't know very many details, but the details I know, he had an attempted sexual assault on his high school gym teacher. And they thought, well, we need to send him in the military. That'll be good for him, right? It'll straighten him out. And then when they get out of the military, they're told, like, go get a minimum wage job, and you're probably not going to get a whole lot of respect. And you wonder why these people are, and you don't know what they've seen, what they've been through in those operations around the world. And some people are just mentally unstable to do this, right? For me, it was more about forgiving him because I don't know how he got to where he was, but at the same time, I don't want to carry him with me. I forgive him so then I don't have to carry him with me for the rest of my life, right? That's me doing it. So there was never, we just never felt the anger. Now that's very unusual. That's why I was saying the post-traumatic growth piece can still happen and you can still go through the stages of grief. But in our scenario, that wasn't the case for us. So I couldn't really speak on the anger behalf because it was never really a piece of it. And again, a lot of that, we feel like that was kind of God's embrace, you know.
Arik, thank you so much for telling your story and Elena's story. We have a crystal book that has Always November engraved on it, and we are so grateful that you and your family are part of the Pepperdine community.
Thank you. Thank you very much.